And okay, so I'm very happy that all of you could make it. Before we get started, I just want to say this Vishnu Sahasranam. The word Sahasranam is means thousand, but in Sanskrit there is this thing about this thousand is really equated to infinite. So there is no thing as since if some so Vishnu Sahasranam normally people say it's thousand names of Vishnu praises chants of Vishnu's name, but it's really it's infinite names of Lord Vishnu. Mhm. So the the thing that I have heard from many people, and for I have listened to from about the Bhashyam. Bhashyam means the interpretation of Vishnu Sahasranam. Everybody talks about uh, one thing is that people who are drawn to listening to Vishnu Sahasranam who are interested in Vishnu Sahasranam must have done something very nice in their previous life. So the very fact that all of you all are here and we all are trying to listen, that's a good thing that we also have something that has been good for us. Uh, the Vishnu Sahasranam that I'm going to talk about, the interpretation, the Bhashyam that I'm going to talk about is purely Adi Shankaracharya's interpretation. I believe there are other kind of interpretations also, uh, which I am not very familiar with. I have listened to the lectures and interpretations of Adi Shankaracharya. So what we are going to hear about is mainly Adi Shankara's philosophy. Now, when Adi Shankaracharya had this philosophy, his emphasis, if you listen to any of his lectures, or if you listen to any of his interpretations, it really falls to it comes to the primary Advaitic philosophy. For many kids, I think here Advaita is not a concept they might be familiar with. Uh, so we'll try and it is hard to isolate Advaitic philosophy from when we talk about Vishnu Sahasranam, at least here. But at some point of time, I will try and highlight on what that philosophy means and why it is important uh, and how it is different from a non-Advaitic philosophy. Okay? That's a background that I want to give here. Uh, the thing that in Hindu philosophy, again, I'm touching upon these things because this is the basis for understanding this shlokas and what these shlokas mean. In Hindu philosophy, what we get into is that our life right now is based on what our karma is in our previous life. So we go through this human life, at least as far as Hindu mythology, Hindu way of thinking is that we go through life, birth, death, life, birth. That cycle goes on. The birth, death cycle is continuous until man, the human who's born, realizes uh, the Atman or Brahman or God or whatever we have, supreme power. So the birth and life, death cycle is primarily based on the karma. The karma is any action or any duty that you do, good or bad. There's nothing like there's a bad karma, good karma. There's any karma that you do is it creates this situation where you go through this birth and death life cycle. There is nothing doom or gloom about having karma or being born or going through that cycle. But again, the ultimate goal of all our and the ultimate philosophy of all our sages is that at some time you should realize your own inner self, and then you will eventually come out of the cycle. Because many times we go through the cycle, we go through these pleasures, pains, we go through all that, right? As a child, as a kid, as an adult, also we all experience that to an extent. So Vishnu Sahasranam really talks about how to understand your inner self. Essentially, Vishnu Sahasranam is a lot of Vishnu Sahasranam is an essence of all the Vedas and Upanishads. Uh, gist of it's basically a gist of all the Upanishads. We have so 4 Vedas and 10 important Upanishads. So the essence of all that is captured in Vishnu Sahasranam. So when somebody goes through understanding Vishnu Sahasranam, they learn a lot about the other Upanishads and other Vedas that we have, the Vedic scriptures that we have. Okay? So the benefits, again, we have to talk about that, right? So the benefits that, again, I keep telling, like, sometimes I talk to my own kids about like doing certain activities, and they ask me what's the benefit, what do I get? I don't see that like happening. Like, I'd say a prayer, you ask me to sit and do a prayer, what do I get out of it? It's true, you don't see a tangible effect, like the way, like, if you, for example, run 3 miles every day, you will have, like, your your health parameters do better. You will have a better, like, and you can lower your sugar level, or you can lower your diabetic level, maybe all that. But here, the benefits are not tangible, but the benefits are much more powerful, in the sense that when you chant Vishnu Sahasranam every day, or if you listen to Vishnu Sahasranam every day, it helps you in your inner self. There is a development in yourself. The sound, the words, the and meanings are make you realize and makes your inner self. You mentally get stronger than what you are. So the the help is to develop that inner peace. That's what we are all trying to get at some point of time, right? The inner peace, the inner happiness, and this sloka is very powerful in that aspect. It helps you uh, get that inner peace and inner happiness, which will help you navigate through all these complexities and troubles that you might face in your life going forward at any point of time, be it at 40, 50, 30, 20, 10, whatever it is. We all have situations that we have to face, including COVID, including any very other situations, right? So the the these scriptures, or these, like, slokas, are powerful, and when you start understanding them, when you understand the inner meaning, when you go through these situations, it, like, it keeps your mind in a very balanced situation where you're able to, you can handle it better. So again, this is what, again, Hindu mythology says, that you are birth, rebirth, your karma is not, it's all not in your hands. Anything, or it's preordained. Everything that you're going through is preordained, but doesn't mean that you're, like, you're helpless. What you can do about it, how you can react to it, is all really in your hands. And when you start listening to this, it helps you understand that better, and you can navigate through your problems better. Okay? Now, so I'm going to start about Vishnu Sahasranam now, and I'm going to say where I'm going to I'm going to set the stage for this. How did it come up? So the war between Pandavas and Kauravas is over. Okay? They are all done. Bhishma is a very powerful person. Bhishma is in his deathbed. I don't know if you know that he is. Arjuna has made a bed for him with arrows, and he's lying on that arrow bed. Okay? The thing about Bhishma is he he is not somebody who you can go and kill him and he's not going to die like that. He's a very powerful person. He's a very advanced and very spiritual guru. Okay? And when he was a young person, his own father, right? He was supposed to be if you might know the story, but I'm still going to repeat the story. His name was Sudama. I'm sorry, his father's name was Shantanu. His father, he was destined to the throne after his father, but there were situations where that didn't happen. His father's wife, whose stepmother, or, like, who she decided that, like, she wanted her child to become the king, and there was this, like, this conflict going on. And that time Bhishma said, you know what, I am going to renounce power that I have. I'm not going to seek for any of this power. I am here. My life is just to protect the kingdom, and I'll make sure that every king will get a protection from me. Now, it is hard to find for all of us. It's hard to be in that situation where you can, with that kind of love for your parents, you can do that. Despite, like, it's hard when you're going through this. It's very hard to give up something as big as, like, being a king. So Shantanu, when he's again, these people are very powerful at that point of time. They are like, they, whatever they say happened, because they had done a lot of penance. They had, like, very clear thought. They did all the good deeds, and so when they say something, it happens. So his father Shantanu gave him a, a boon. A boon is a wish. He said something which he said, like, Bhishma, you have done this all this sacrifice for me. What I'm going to tell you is, like, you, when you will, nobody can kill you. You can decide when you want to lose your life, give up your life, right? So, which was a very powerful thing. So this is a situation that we are in, where Bhishma is lying down. He is preparing for his, like, and he's saying that I'm done. I've Pandavas have won. The Hastinapur that they're going to take over is going to be in safe hands. That's what my role was. They are very nice people. Although I fought against them, I know that they are, like, they have the principles, they have dharma. I'm very happy about them taking over. Now I am done. I am going to, like, give up my life eventually. So he's lying in this bed and that bed, and he's almost there. Like, it's all over. Now on the other side, you had Pandavas. Pandavas was the eldest brother was this person named Yudhishthira. Now Yudhishthira was he's a he was happy about winning, and he was very excited, and they're all, like, celebrating. All that was good. They won, and they won it righteously. But still, Yudhishthira was also called Dharmaputra. What that means is that he always was a person who dictated, who knew the right from wrong very well, and he knew what his duties were very, very well. So if something was wrong or something was right, he would know it, he would act upon it, and he would insist that that's the way to go. So despite all this, like, victory and all that by his brothers and all that, he felt very restless. He had that, like, that restless feeling in him that, what, I won all that, but what, at what cost? There are so many people got killed. There are so many lives that were lost. There's not only human lives, also the animal lives. There are elephants and horses and all that. There is all these things lost for what? For the benefit of me ruling this kingdom. So that was the thing that was always constantly, biting into him. Such thoughts are also sometimes happen to us, right? So we also go through the situation where we feel bad about something. We have this, we get something. For example, we achieve something. We also feel that, like, is this what really, like, I have achieved it? I know I did it, but was that what I really wanted, or is this the compromise that I have? Like, for example, let's say if a person is there, he works very hard, he sacrifices everything, he, like, forgoes his family, he forgoes his children, he does all that, he keeps working, and he gets promoted at the job. And he comes, like, he gets a good position, he gets a lot of money. But then at some point of time, like, he'll realize that, oh, what, is this what I really wanted in life? Is this what I gave up so much in life? So many sacrifices happened. Is that what I really wanted? Even Yudhishthira, that thing is, even Yudhishthira, who knew the right from wrong, who was supposed to be a strong king, was very mentally powerful, was supposed to be advising everybody, went into a situation where he had these kind of, like, questions. What am I doing here? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Like, these people have killed, everybody has died, and he comes to Lord Krishna. Now, Lord Krishna has already gone through this. Okay, he has replayed this entire Bhagavad Gita. He has done this with Arjuna. Now, Lord Krishna says, like, you know what? I'm not the best person to answer this. What we are going to do is, you and I, we'll approach Bhishma. Okay, he's not dead yet. He's there, but you can't find any other guru who's better than that. I will witness what the conversation between you and him is going to be. I'll be there. I would like to witness it. In my presence, Bhishma will tell you, give you all the, he'll clarify your doubts. That's what uh, the role of uh, those days, those guru and shishya was, like disciples and gurus. So many times when you have doubts, when you have questions in life, you should approach somebody that you're like, you should talk to them. Like, for example, as a child, if you have doubts, if you have certain things that you're running in through in your life, like you're going through some kind of difficulty in your life, or some kind of question that you have, as you start growing up, you think that you know better. You sometimes feel that, you know what, I can handle this by myself. But still, you can approach your parent, who in this current modern world, they are the gurus. We don't live in a world where we have disciple guru as most of us do. Some of us do, most of us don't. Our guru are our own parents. There are many times I go to my own father or mother and I ask, like, at this age, when I'm 50, I ask, I have issues, I have questions. I ask my father about, like, what would you do, why is it, and how it is, and things like that. So Krishna says, Yudhishthira, go to Bhishmacharya. So they approach Bhishmacharya. Okay? And now Yudhishthira had basically 6 questions. His questions were all related to, it's more philosophical. His questions were related, okay, I won all this, but what is it? So his first question was, I'm going to tell it in Sanskrit, and then I'll get into the meaning of each of these questions in a short manner. Okay? And we'll try and see how much we can cover it. So the first question is, Kimekam Daivatam Loke. Okay. That's his first question. Kimvap Ekam Parayanam. Stuvantak Kam Kankamarchantah. That's his third question. Then fourth question is, Kankamarchantah Prapnuyur Manava Shubham. His fifth question is, Ko Dharma Sarvana, Ko Dharma Dharmana, Parama Matamo Mataha. And his sixth question is, Kim Japan Muchyate Jantur Janma Samsara Bandhanat. So here are these 6 questions. First question was, Kimekam Daivatam Loke. See, the first question is Kimekam Daivatam Loke. It's like, first question is related, who is the greatest lord of the world? There are so many gods and lords in this world, right? We have, like, some people worship Ganesha, some people worship Lord Vishnu, some people worship Shiva. So all of us have, based on how we are raised, we have our Ishta Bhagavan, or our God that we have as our frontal or foremost deity, right? So he had something very similar. He's saying, like, okay, we have all these gods there. Like, we have so many people who are gods, but who I really wish, who tell me, who's the God that I can worship? Who's the greatest of all? He's getting very practical here. Who do I worship? Why, like, go through, like, layers? I'll go top at that top hierarchy. Is there a top person there whom I can worship, and everything is okay? Okay. So he's saying, Kimekam Daivatam Loke. Kimekam, of all the lords, of all the gods, who is the greatest? Okay. And the second question, Kimvap Ekam Parayanam. We all, again, like I said in Hindu, we go through this life and death cycle. We born, dying, we born and die, we have the rebirth every time. So we go through this, okay, life where it's going through a cycle. And we go through, in a life itself, we could do so many things. We go through education, we go through, first we start with school, we go through our college life, where it's like, all stressed about, like, how do I compete with my own peers? How do I do well? And then after college then it comes to either, like, you decide, okay, whether I should, like, do a post-graduation to make myself more qualified that I can get a better job. Or if I get a job, am I going to get a job? That's my thing, right? If I'm going through this, what if I don't get a job? And what if I get a job, what do I do? There are a lot of these stresses that come across. There are all these decision making aspects that come into your life. And then once you get in a job, how well do I do in my job? How do I grow? How do I keep myself at the level best? And then when you have, at some point of time, you get married and you have children, you have to think about, okay, how do I not only keep myself happy, but how do I keep my own kids and children they can at a level where they should be. And then you grow up and then you go through that responsibility. After your children are all done, then you go become older, and then you have oh, what am I going to do with my health? Then how do I go through my health? How do I keep myself fit? And then when you start getting older, obviously your health also problems also aggravate, and then you have to you have to take care of yourself better. How do you take care? So it's infinite, the complexity keeps coming up. So the question that he's asking here is, Kimba Ekam Parayanam. When does Parayanam means, when does it end? Where does it end? Who does it end with? Where do I go after this? All this I do, okay, I went through my life. I fought with these people, I killed all these people, I eliminated the Kauravas, I eliminated their their allies. Where am I going to go after this? Where is my end? Kimba Pekam Parayanam. Stuvantakam. That's a third question. Okay, before I get there, okay, this Parayanam, I just wanted to bring another small story here, context here, which is what we said, right? The Parayanam is the concept of Parayanam is how you can relinquish. Who do you give up to? When you give up to somebody, right? When when you say Lord, just take care of me, and eventually, if you have that strong belief, God will come and your Lord or God, He will come and help you. He'll come and provide you the support. If you have the true the real inner belief that please take care of me. I'm in the situation. I'm in a tough situation. Please take care of me. He or she will come and help you. Okay, that belief we should have. So one of the things that was happening was there was this when this was before the war. Pandavas were there with they were banished, right? They were told Kauravas told them you got to be out of this place for 13 or 14 years. You can't come here. So they were in that forest, and they were famous. They were popular. So there was this sage. His name was Durvasa. Now sages in those days, again, they were they were not in one place. They were nomadic. They used to go to different places. They used to meet different people. They used to give their advices. They used to give their opinions. They used to inculcate knowledge and all that. So Durvasa, he had 1,000 disciples. So one day he shows up at Lord Yudhishthira's hut palace, where the place where they were all deciding, small place about Durvasa and his 5 brothers and the 5 Pandava brothers and Draupadi. So what Durvasa was said was see, those days again, people don't come and text you or call you up and say I'm going to show up at your house. They just show up. That was the custom. You just show up and you say I'm going to come. You ought to feed me. That's exactly what Durvasa said. He said I'm there. I have to be fed. Me and my 1,000 disciples are there. Please feed me. We are hungry, extremely hungry. Now the Pandavas and the Draupadi, they were not very well off because they were in the forest. But Draupadi had this vessel, which would basically once a day. It was a vessel given to her by God. Okay, essentially, the vessel was such that once a day you could use it and prepare food. And after you eat your food, after you distribute your food, you clean the vessel, and that's it. You cannot keep reusing the vessel, and you can't keep feeding everybody all the time. It was just one use every day, once per day. It was very different. So unfortunately, Draupadi had gone through that for that day before Durvasa came up. She had fed all her brother, all her husbands, all the 4 or 5 husbands, and they're all they're all really satisfied, given that even Bhima was there. So he was had to also be fed. So everybody was fed, everybody was happy, they were all there. But when Durvasa showed up, this vessel was already washed. So they were in a very tight situation. Now, again, unlike today, where you can say, I'm so sorry, I don't have the ability. You don't have that option there. Those days, you didn't have the option of saying, you know what, I can't, like, I'm done. I'm like, no, I don't have the enough clear, bandwidth for me. I don't have the resources. So what really happened that day was like, Durvasa said, okay, I'm coming. He said, okay. She said, like, why? That's all they can do, right? So Durvasa came up and said, but Durvasa said, you know what? And they had principles, okay? They didn't just show up and start eating. They said, like, I will show up, we'll come for lunch. But then they had to take bath. So they said, we'll go take bath and come. And we'll come for lunch. The thing is that you cannot refuse somebody because a person like Durvasa was very short tempered. You tell Durvasa that, you know what, I cannot do it, he might flip off and he might say like, you know what, he'll start giving curses. Now a person like Durvasa who has done a lot of tapas or puja, his whatever he says will turn out to be true. So it's not like the way we say it, it's not that. Those days they were very powerful. When they said something, it happened. So all these people were very fearful. Yudhishthira was very fearful. Yudhishthira was very worried. And Draupadi was worried, especially because she was a lady who was in charge of the kitchen. So they were all worried. They were saying, so Draupadi spoke to, was thinking of a Lord. She has that, she's a divine lady. So she was praying to Lord. She was saying like, Lord, please help me out. Like, how am I going to deal with this? This is not like, something that I'm prepared for. It is not my fault. I didn't know that. Like, and if I had known that Durvasa was coming, I would have done it. But I'm in a very helpless situation. What do I do? See, you have to save me, protect me. See, that time, Lord Krishna shows up. Krishna was very close to the Pandavas. He used to show up often again and give them advice. So Krishna also shows up after Durvasa and their 1,000 disciples left for this taking bath in the river. And Krishna shows up. Krishna says, you know what, I'm very, very hungry. Please, I want something to eat. I'm ravenous. I can't handle this. So Draupadi even more flux. She's frustrated. That guy, Durvasa and his 1,000 disciples came and he said, I wanted you're coming to me and you're asking me, come on, Lord, you know that, you know our situation here. So she said, I don't know, Draupadi, I am very hungry. You know what, just go check your vessel. You might have something at least for me. So Draupadi goes and says, okay, I don't have anything. It's all over. All these brothers, Bhima is there. How can he leave anything? So she said, no, I don't know. I don't. Just please go check. Give me something at least. Something. I don't want nothing big. Just give me something. So she goes in and she sees a vessel and she says, almost it's empty, except for a small, that's called spinach particle. They had spinach particle was sticking in the vessel. So she says, gets the vessel to Krishna and says, Krishna, see, this is what I told you. I don't have anything here. Why do you make me feel bad? So Krishna looked at the vessel and said, you have that small vessel, give me that. Whatever you have there, that's enough. I'll take that. That's what I want. So he takes that and he eats it up. He eats that small spinach particle which is left. And the pot is completely empty now. There's nothing there. So he has eaten. He said, okay, now I think I'm done. I had better, but it's okay. I'm fine. And he goes away with whatever he has to do. So now the effect of that is his divine nature is God, So when he had that small spinach particle, it was so powerful that it filled up not only him, but also it filled up Durvasa and all his 1,000 disciples. All his disciples and 1,000 Durvasa were extremely content and full suddenly. They didn't know what is going on. They're taking bath and suddenly I'm feeling very full. I'm not able to, I can't even eat a drop of rice or anything. I can't do anything. So they are all full. They are now in the other situation. Now they are very embarrassed now. Okay. Because when you say you're going to come to somebody's house and say I'm going to come for dinner to your house and you don't show up and the person has cooked everything around, is gone to out of this, you'll feel obviously very embarrassed. You'll feel flustered. Then say, okay, how will I deal with this? So at that point, Yudhishthira sends Bhima and says, Yudhishthira, go ask, you have to invite them again. Go ask ask Durvasa and his disciples to come over. So then Bina approaches, Durvasa bows his hand down and says, please, I'm very, very sorry. I cannot do it. We are so full. I hope Draupadi, I hope Yudhishthira understand that. I'm very, very sorry. And they really apologetic and they almost literally run away from the place. So the point is that Parayanam is when who is the ultimate person who I can fall to for anything that happens to me. When I'm there, then who is the person who will be my final abode? Who will be the person who will take care of me? Who will be at the end of it? Who will really be my savior? So that's where the Parayanam comes up. So that's one of the interpretations. So that's the second question. Kimva Pekam Parayanam. Stuvantakam. Who should be praised? Who should I who should I praise? When I'm praying, who should I praise? Okay. So I think we have about 5 minutes, right, Manish?
Yeah, we have got 8 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll try and get a wrap up these questions that Yudhishthira wanted to ask to Bhima, and then next week we'll probably get into how Bhima responds to it. Okay. So if I'm not complete, then we'll get more into these questions next week also. So the third question that he asked was Tuam Takkam. Who should I be praising when I'm praying to Lord? Who should I be praising? How should I be praising? Kankamarchanta prapnuyur manava shubham. How should I worship? Should I do what kind of puja should I do? What should I do? How much? How should I go about worshipping? It's all very natural questions. Okay, you're at that point of time you're trying to say, okay, who should I worship? How should I worship? How should I give my archana to this Lord? And so that I attain moksha. I want to get out of this life of stress, distress, happiness, pleasure. I just want to get out of this. I just want to be doing something which will give me enlightenment. Okay? And then the fifth question he asked was, Ko dharma sarva dharmana paramo mata madha. So, Ko dharma sarva dharmana. That means of all the dharmas, dharma is duty. Dharma is for you, dharma is to go to job or to for you as a student who is is to go to school and do very well. Your dharma. For a person like me, the dharma is to take care of my children, my family. For a dharma for a person who is who is probably gone through all the rest of his life and who is at in the 60s or 70s, maybe when he doesn't have his responsibilities, his dharma might be something different. So dharma is different for that. For some people, dharma is to do sacrifices, to help people. For some people, dharma is to be contributing. For example, Bill Gates' dharma might be philanthropy. He has so much money, he has this dharma is not to make anymore work, but it's to to distribute money and distribute as well in the right way. So ko dharma sarva dharmana paramo mataha, which is that dharma which if I practice is the best of all the dharmas. There are so many things you can do, right? See, for example, many times I have my own conflict and I have this thing, okay, how do I what is the best way to spend my hard-earned money? Do I go for charity? Do I spend okay, do I spend my money to help temples here in this country? Or do I spend my money, is that one dharma? Or is it's my money to be spent on, for example, helping children who for education in India? So there are several thoughts that come up, right? So he's asking which is the best dharma, okay? And then the last question he asks is, Kim japam muchyate janto janma samsara bandhana. This is the question that he asks. What japa, what mantra, what prayer, how should I do it? What prayer should I do? Which will release me of this life and death cycle, and which will make me attain my moksha or salvation or whatever his desires. Okay. So these are the 6 questions that he asked. And next week, what we'll do is we'll try and get to maybe some of these questions itself, or we'll get into how Bhishma answers those questions. Bhishma is a very wise person, how he answers it. So the Vishnu Sahasranam is, there are 2 things, right? This mantra that you have, you can listen to this mantra whenever you want it. Okay. There is that's a big thing about Vishnu Sahasranam. There is an ideal time. Morning and evening would be good, but it doesn't mean that you should not listen to it at any other time. You can listen to it any other time. You can listen to any time of the day. That's my understanding of what people have told me, and like from what I've heard from others. The second thing is the best way to get Vishnu Sahasranam is through. There are a lot of good YouTubes and other channels where all that you have, if you go to Google and if you search for, you just search for Vishnu Sahasranam, and there is a recital by M.S. Subbulakshmi. It's a 29-minute recital. If you listen to that, you don't have to do it every day. Whenever you find time, whenever you are doing anything, if you're, for example, let's say you're going for a walk, you can listen to it and walk if you want. That's absolutely fine. Now, there are two things again here, right? One is mantra, listening to the mantra and not knowing the meaning, which is what most of us are. Many of us don't know the meaning of the Sanskrit mantra. What Shastra has said, our Hindu philosophy has said, is that is absolutely fine. That's really okay. You don't have to know the meaning of the mantra to get the benefits of the mantra. Even if you listen to it, that's good. Still better is if you can listen to it, learn it, and recite it. Still better is to learn it, recite it, and know the meaning. But there's nothing wrong with just listening to it. So I would advise, whenever you find time, again, we are all busy here. We have our own structure life. It's fine. If you find time, then you should just just search in Google or YouTube for Vishnu Sahasranam, M.S. Subbulakshmi. Her M.S. Subbulakshmi, I have not heard others, but I have learned my Vishnu Sahasranam through this recital from M.S. Subbulakshmi. Her pronunciation is extremely clear and it's very accurate. So if you keep listening to it, you will learn eventually. There's no doubt about it. Young children, some of you will learn faster than people like me, because your minds are going to absorb things like a sponge. So it is the best opportunity for you, if you're young, it's a very good opportunity for you to listen to it now. The more you listen now, you will be able to pick this up faster. You have an advantage. I got to say that. Okay.